Hello, everyone. I'm James Strang. This is the newest first video in my series Spectrum of James, which I'm restarting for 2024. It's not quite 2024 yet, it is the 28th of December 2023. Today's episode 1, because I'm not waiting. I'm going to get a little bit more into what the Spectrum of James is and what I mean by spectrum and why that's important. But first, I want to talk about some inspiration that I had. I was in Arizona in November with family. We were there for 2 weeks, and it was a workcation where I worked the mornings and early afternoon, and then spent the rest of the time with family and doing fun things with my immediate and extended family. And I personally, as a work from home dad, I really prefer that type of trip because I could have more trips without having to take explicit time off. So it works out really well. We were there in Arizona for 2 weeks in this with family, staying at my aunt's house. And while we were there, we attended church with my aunt. And I'm not religious, although I was raised religious. Um, but I learned something. I had some inspiration from church, and so I'm going to give some religious context to what the speaker was saying. This was a member who was speaking, not a professional speaker. In this church, members give small sermons, and so he was talking about Christ-like love, and was telling some stories about, like the things that he had seen and experienced and from his actions. And one thing that stuck out to me was that he didn't fear the consequences of doing these things, acting on this love. And so that really kind of inspired me. I love helping other people, um, but I typically try to hoist myself up and try to raise myself higher to the high ground to then help people up to my level. Um, Thinking that, my long term plans to elevate myself are helping my fellow man reach my position. And that's, there's some value in that. But I had the thought of paint a picture here for you. Say I'm in a muddy swamp area and there's a large rock, and everyone is sinking into the mud slowly. And I am in a position where I can not get up onto the rock, or like it would be very difficult for me to get up onto the rock. Can I go and help the people beside me, lift them up, take on their weight temporarily to lift them up higher than my head onto the safe rock, while at the same time, because I took on that extra weight, I would sink in a little bit further into the mud, therefore putting myself in a worse position. Do I love people enough that I would be um, brave enough to take on that risk that might have be detrimental to myself? Um, Now, and I think that this year I'm really hoping that I am able to think about this and able um, to find positions where I can help people without having that fear of not being able to get my long-term plans because I decided to help someone in the moment, impulsively and instantly. Trying to find ways where I can see someone in need and instantly help them, um, rather than trying to ensure that I have enough for me first. Whether that's, a monetary donation or a gift, or just being able to spend some time um, helping other people that I could spend working, that I could spend making money for myself. Can I take time to help others when I have, work I could do to potentially advance my own financial situation? So that's this inspiration I had. I don't necessarily know if I'm going to be able to do that, but I'm starting to pay attention to it a little bit more, and I would love to be able to be that kind of guy, because I really think that I want to help people, but I've been limited in the way I could help others because of the stance I've kind of taken where I put myself first. So that was my inspiration. That's what I wanted to share. When I came up with the idea to start these videos, because of that inspiration, I decided I needed to start immediately, rather than wait until January 1st, where this is kind of like my New Year's resolution, but I couldn't wait because of that inspiration. Now, the spectrum of James. Spectrum is a really powerful word because it can mean a lot of things. I personally have an autism diagnosis, and so I would say I'm on the autism spectrum. Neurodiversity is a spectrum, and autism is part of that spectrum, but it's not the only thing on that spectrum. And I'm probably not just autistic. I probably have some ADHD type tendencies as well. I don't know. I don't have a formal diagnosis for that, and that's okay. But it's not, the spectrum of James is not just about that. There are other people that identify as being on different spectrums. There's a gender spectrum, there's a sexuality spectrum, there's a race spectrum. And one thing about a spectrum, I went to school for electronic engineering, so I can talk about the frequency spectrum in terms of radio waves. Every frequency is on this radio wave, electromagnetic wave spectrum. And so, like when you hear things like 5 gigahertz or 2.4 gigahertz for Wi-Fi bands, those are spots on the electromagnetic wave spectrum. Same with the radio stations. You start around like 88.1 for FM and go up to like 107 point something. Those are also the same, on the same spectrum as 2.4 and 5 gigahertz for Wi-Fi. Cell phone signals are a different spectrum, are a different area of the same spectrum. And then there's a lot of different noise and things like that in the air. So those spectrums are not, like, they're everywhere. And I think that even if like everyone kind of has to have a place on each of those spectrums. So on the neurodiversity spectrum, which I'm definitely, well, I think everyone's on it because everyone has a brain, but I'm a little bit more divergent from the typical area of the spectrum. But even on, like, as a straight white man, I would say I'm still on the gender spectrum, the sexuality spectrum, and the race spectrum, even though I'm not necessarily divergent from the typical, non-diverse person. Like it's especially where I live in Canada. Now, but acknowledging that I'm on that spectrum is not necessarily to take away from those people that are diverse on that spectrum, but it's to help myself be a better ally in those areas. And so I'm looking for different areas where I'm on the same spectrum as others as a way for me to recognize what I can do to be a better ally. Now, some things about spectrums. Color is a spectrum. And light, colored light, is a spectrum. There are 7 colors on the rainbow, but that's really not the way it works. If you were to look at a rainbow, you would have to try really hard to find the exact line in which red turns into orange, turns into yellow, turns into blue, turns into indigo, and turns into violet. And then those 7 colors, with all the different other colors in between them, are also only the visible light of a rainbow. There's infrared and there's ultraviolet, and then there's other invisible light around that. And so saying that we're on a spectrum is really key, because there's not a clear line here or there. And you can be on the spectrum and not necessarily have to say, oh yeah, I'm an orange on the spectrum. You don't have to do that, because the spectrum doesn't necessarily have orange, talking about the rainbow and light. There's also visible and invisible parts of the spectrum, and I think that's key for all spectrums, is that there's the visible part and there's the invisible part. As someone who's neurodivergent, often it's not visible, and that's intentional in a lot of cases. As someone grew up trying to fit in, definitely trying to not put people off, or trying to act like a part of society. But I sometimes think differently than others, and I sometimes have different ideas or different things that I come up with, and that's part of the invisible part of me. The spectrum of James isn't about neurodivergence explicitly, it's about me. The spectrum of me as a person, not about neurodivergence. But I am neurodivergent. I am also a hobbyist maker. I'm an ad tech developer, a strategist in the ad tech industry. I'm also, did I say father? I'm a father of 2 children, a husband. These are all parts of my spectrum. Um, you may not know, but I like to do 3D printing, laser cutting, starting to get into welding. So like, I have other things that make up me, and that's kind of what this is about. It's about me, my stories, what I've learned, and me sharing it with others. And so I hope you enjoy, and I hope that you follow along. There's going to be a lot of these videos. I'm going to try to do one every single day. And so, that's my goal. And if I fail, well, I'm going to keep going. But every day is a lofty goal. I had a goal to do every Spectrum of James video every day in 2021. And I started, and I did probably 11 in the month. I got a goal for a month. So I did 11. I got 35% or so of that month. And so now we'll see how I fare. Hopefully you follow along, you enjoy these videos, and learn something that you can apply in your life. I'm not saying I'm an expert. I'm not saying that you should do everything I do, but I hope that you can learn from some of my insights and some of my stories, and I wish you well. Thanks.